Hi, this is Brandon with Century 21, and today we're going to talk about the real estate market and the real estate cycle. In understanding how the real estate cycle works, you can decide for yourself whether now is a good time to think about potentially selling your home. So in understanding the four phases, what we've seen, the bottom of the market was in 2011. That's considered the trough, right? And then the four phases are the expansion phase, the recovery phase, the hypersupply phase, and the recession phase. So you typically have 5 to 7 years of growth, and then you have about 5 to 7 years of decline in the market. And in between, there's a recovery phase and a hypersupply phase. So we've seen since 2011 being the bottom of the market, it has been in an expansion market, a growth market, for now over 10 years. When on average, historically, it's been about 5 to 7 years of growth, which we should have started seeing the shift in 2018, which we did. And the way we knew we were starting to see the shift was the average days on market increase from about 40 days on market to, at that point in time, about 109 days on market. We started seeing more homes on the market, and there's an important rate called the absorption rate. What the absorption rate is the level of inventory that's out there. So if it's 2 months absorption rate, that means we have 2 months supply on the market. At the time in 2018, in certain areas we saw 15-month supply, 16-month supply in Camarillo. Other areas we saw 60-month supply. And that means we've shifted completely into a buyer's market. So during that shift, the only thing that changed was the interest rate stayed in the low threes in 2018. And with that, being combined with the pandemic that hit, we created another market that created another demand. And so instead of shifting and going into its natural progression, which would have been hypersupply, and then after that down to the recession, we saw another growth. And it was an inflated market of about 6.7 million transactions that took place after COVID. So during that time, homes and prices and affordability actually hit. If you see in 2020, the affordability rate was about at 169, which means that about 69% of the population could afford a home over the average sales price. So there was a lot of people who can afford a home, to put it plain, based on those 2 and 3% interest rates. Well, today we're at about 7.5% average interest rate. We also have prices at all-time highs because we had a 42% increase in equity nationally over the last 2 years. So what that means is now we're seeing payments on average at about $5,000 a month here in California. So that's really putting a damper on the affordability. And so when somebody asks me, how can you be so certain that the market's going to shift or that it's coming? And what I can tell you is, with the affordability factor hitting its breaking point, people can no longer afford to make that mortgage payment at $5,000 a month. And that's typically with $100,000 to $200,000 down for the average sales price right now, which is dropping in Camarillo to about $760,000 is your average sales price. So with that $760,000 sales price and the increase of all the costs and expenses that are happening around us, we have student loan payments that are coming into effect. We also have inflation in terms of gas prices that have stayed high in California. $5 to $6 a gallon is very normal, right? We also have the cost of groceries that have picked up. Going out to eat has increased. Credit card debts are now being maxed out. So these spending habits haven't changed. And so with these different factors, you're going to start seeing the next thing is HELOCs, home lines of equity, where people start pulling equity out of their property. Notice the defaults are already starting to hit. In Oxnard, we pulled up, there were over 40 homes that were on the notice of default list. Throughout Ventura County, we're going to start seeing more and more of that increase as jobs are feeling the pressure with increased minimum wage that is hitting almost $20 an hour, and the cost of doing business is getting so expensive that now we're even seeing insurance companies move out of state. Insurance companies like Allstate and we have State Farm. Those two major carriers have decided to move out of California. So what does that mean to you as a homeowner? Existing homeowners thinking about moving or thinking about staying in California. Your premium on average on your next renewal if you stay with with Farmers Insurance, is going to be about 30%. 30% is the average that everybody is going to feel. That's on the low side. If you live next to a high fire zone, you could be seeing a 230% increase. So what does that mean? That means now that if you're paying impounds, which means that your monthly payment has taxes, insurance, your principal and your interest, and you pay all that in your monthly payment, you're going to see your mortgage payment increase. And on average, 30% just on that homeowner's insurance itself. What else does it mean? For you agents that are listening out there, that are listening to this video, know that you need to lock up. If you're looking at buying a home or you have a buyer who's purchasing a property, Farmers now is only doing or insuring 7,000 policies a month. So with all the other companies moving out, now there's been a flood towards Farmers and the companies that have decided to stay in California for this time. Well, they can't take on that liability and insure 13,000 plus is the demand that was hitting right out the gate. So they've capped it at 7,000. So the first month that they did that, in about 25 days of the month, all those policies were used. So only the last 5 days of the month were an issue for anybody who was closing towards the end of the month. The next month, it lasted about 15, 16 days that those 7,000 policies were now being utilized. So it was the second half of the month that borrowers were not able to get insurance through Farmers. The third month, it happened in 5 days. So as soon as the month started, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, all 7,000 policies were already utilized and up. They hit their cap. And now for the remainder of the month, you were not allowed to insure with that particular company. This is really important to know as agents. And in terms of how we negotiate and do our due diligence, you want to make sure as you're checking out properties that you are finding out that the property is insurable, as well as what is that increased cost going to look like here in California. So now, sellers, if you're on the fence, we're going to talk about the real estate cycle, okay, as we talked about the 4 phases. The average cycle is 18 years. We are towards the end of that growth phase, 2011 being the bottom of the market, and now we're in 2023. My prediction is in 2024, 2025, 2026, you are going to see an increase, which is called the hypersupply phase. That's called the oh snap phase. I missed the peak of the market. I missed it, and I want to make sure I take as much of that equity as I've made over the last 2 years and try to cash out and sell. Some people are going to be forced to based on life events, job loss, certain situations, a death, a divorce, a separation, and they're going to be forced to sell sooner. Those are about the 4.3 million transactions that we're seeing today that we're on pace for, not the 6.7 in that boom, but at 4.3 million transactions nationally we're seeing right now are typically caused by life events, which are going to continue to happen. But there's going to be more to that. With the added pressure to the cost of living, especially here in California, that 40% number that you saw last year, I believe is going to increase because people no longer can afford to live here in California. Even more than that, think of what's happened in the rental market. There's still a shortage of properties. So if you can't afford a $5,000 a month mortgage, that forces you to the rental market. Well, now we're seeing 1-bedroom properties in the collection going for $2,800 a month. $2,800 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. You're seeing the cost of rent go up. It's becoming very common where before you could get a pretty nice 3-4-bedroom property under $3,000 a month. Now we're seeing that hit $4,000 and even $5,000 a month in rent. So if rent now is $4,000 to $5,000 a month, your average mortgage payment is about $5,000 a month. Your income is not increasing at the same pace that these costs are looking at. If you don't start planning now for the future, then you are going to be caught in a situation that you're going to be forced to do something that may not be in your best interest. And as a seller, as much as you want to hold on to that property and try to keep all those gains that you've had, do not be surprised if where you're sitting at about $250,000 equity today, you could be looking at losing $100,000 to $150,000 easy in the next couple years. We're already seeing in Cameroon 8% reduction in the average sales price from last year, 8%. That trend should continue because the only solution that I could see happening Are the rates dropping? Interest rates coming down, which we've been optimistic that that would happen. You look at the trend for the last 6 months, it stayed in the 6s to 7s. I do not see the rates dropping any lower than that because of what we've seen in history. In 2006 to 2008, when we saw the last market crash, there were 17 straight federal interest rate hikes. Now, we're not seeing those hikes right now, but we saw the quickest in the last 40 years from rates being in the 2 to 3s, jumping to about 6 to 7s. We had them go as high as almost 9%. Many people aren't aware. They were up to the 8s to 9s at one point and then quickly dropped down. And what's happening is the government understands that this cycle and this growth of continued upward growth is not good and it's not healthy for anybody. And so it needs to be countered and it needs to be balanced out. Well, that impact is going to have a big impact on every single person. So if you're considering retirement, if you're considering that you don't have 18 years to recover another cycle and see it go through from the hyper supply phase to the recession phase, which is again another 5 to 7 years down, and if your home with your equity is your most valued asset that you currently have, then you may not have more than another year to 2 years to be able to walk away with that 42% appreciation. If you're getting 38% right now, take as much as you can and make that next move. And so if you're an agent outside of this state of California, please leave your information at the bottom of this message, this video. Leave your contact info. Also let us know, what is the average mortgage payment for the average home for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that's going on in your state? And let everybody know on this message chain what they're going for so that they can compare and see the possibilities in the Midwest. They can see it on the rest of the West Coast, on the East Coast, and see how that change in cost of living can make their lives better and live the lifestyle that they want instead of waiting till it's too late. Thank you for your time. Please feel free to reach out at any point in time, and we will continue this next week. Thank you.